So socialist streamer Hasan Piker, who I've discussed on this channel before, was recently at the Chicago O'Hare International Airport where he said he was detained, after which he took to Twitch to talk about it.
I'm sitting there and they're asking me about Trump, they're asking me about like Hamas, and he kept saying stuff. He kept saying stuff like, do you like Hamas? Do you support Hamas? Do you think Hamas is a resistance group? Do you think Hamas is a terrorist group or a resistance group? Like, he just kept asking over and over again. And I kept repeating the same statement over and over again. I kept saying a couple different things. One, in terms of like Israel and all the wars, I was like, I'm on the side of civilians. I want the endless bloodshed to end. I am a pacifist.
Now, first of all, simply agreeing with the actions of Hamas is protected under the First Amendment. And I say that as someone who adamantly disagrees with probably 99.99% of what Hasan says, and I think he's a nut job. Even if his views are egregious, they are allowed provided that what he says doesn't directly instigate violence because he is an American citizen. That said, I don't think that Hasan is being completely genuine here, especially if you look at the things that he said in the past. Exhibit A being his story when he was mad at Israel for killing the guy supposedly responsible for negotiating peace, saying that Hamas isn't the problem, it's Israel holding up the peace talks, referring to the killing of Ismail Haniyeh, a Hamas leader in Tehran. And also he's expressed his sympathy for other terrorist organizations like Hezbollah.
Hezbollah is a paramilitary organization that is also a part of the Lebanese parliament.
Do we like them or no?
I think as a resistance group, they're pretty successful against Israel. I don't have an issue with them, let's just say.
And when Hina Rabbani Kar, the former foreign affairs minister in Pakistan, called India a rogue state after India launched multiple airstrikes in Pakistan, which, let me remind you, the precipitating factor was the Kashmir attack that happened in late April, in which 26 people, mostly tourists, were killed. And some claim victims were forced to recite the Kalima, a sacred Islamic expression of faith, and were shot dead if they failed. And the group that claimed responsibility was called the Resistance Front, a Pakistani militant organization. Well, when India retaliated, Hasan agreed that they were rogue terrorists.
Any state that violates the sovereignty of another state and strikes civilian targets is a rogue terrorist state. She didn't even say India is a terrorist rogue state. I think she just said India is a rogue state. But I would go so far as to say, yeah, they're doing terrorism.
So in Hasan's eyes, India is a terrorist state, but not Pakistan, who's been the perpetrator of countless acts of violence against India for years. And I too am all for avoiding civilian deaths. But the point is that Hasan seems to be okay with those deaths that happened during the Kashmir attack. And considering the number of times he's either downplayed the severity of Israeli victims during the Palestine-Israel conflict, or outright laughed at them, I wouldn't say he's on the side of peace. And the last time I covered him, he had shown support for violence against a senator. So I don't think Hasan is a pacifist that he claims to be. But let's see what else he has to say about him getting detained.
I want wars to end. I just kept repeating that over and over again every single time he asked me a question, because the first stuff was just completely idiotic and ridiculous, and I think they did it because they know who the fuck I am, and they wanted to put the fear of God into me, not knowing that I'm a stubborn piece of and that's not going to work at all. The second half of the conversation was actually like, because he left, went away for like 35 minutes, came back, and then he asked like actionable items. But one thing that I will take note of that I thought was very interesting was the fact that a lot of the Ethan Kleins of the world have like cried about over and over again were unironically brought up in that conversation. I was shocked. Okay, not like the bleach sword, obviously, but like the Houthi. Like, did you interview a Houthi? It says here that you interviewed a Houthi. And I was like, or was he actually a Houthi? And I was like, he's not. You can look to all of the reporting that came out afterwards and before I interviewed him that he is not a Houthi, that he is a regular Yemeni citizen. And I said, like, his name is Rashid al-Haddad. He is not even a Shia. And the dude, luckily, again, Iraqi, went, oh, yeah, that's right. That's a Sunni last name. Al-Haddad is a Sunni last name. So he must not have been a Houthi.
Now, just to catch some of you up to speed, Hasan Piker did use his channel to interview, as he said, Rashid al-Haddad, who was dubbed Hot Houthi Pirate and compared to Timothy Chalamet. Because one, he posted a TikTok sailing around the Galaxy Leader, a cargo ship seized by Yemen's militant Houthis, and because he bears a bit of a resemblance to Timothy Chalamet. And while you are allowed to interview who you want, I mean, Piers Morgan has interviewed Taliban members and other media members have interviewed terrorists too, which is okay provided that you adequately scrutinize them. This is what Hasan had to say about Rashid.
I talked to a teenager from Yemen, okay, who everyone called, myself included, called Timothy Charlemagne or Chalamet.
Is that the One Piece one?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now this kid is like, I think he was like 19 at the time when I talked to him, which means that for most of his life he has withstood genocide. Right? That's all he's known. Like he is a person whose only experience is like, it's literally like talking to Anne Frank, basically. Okay, being able to talk to Anne Frank in real time.
Now, I find it funny that he's comparing this guy to Anne Frank, a girl who was gassed alive simply for being Jewish, when Rashid has posted to his social media about brutally executing Zionists. And whether or not Rashid is a Houthi, it is fair to say that Hasan aligns himself with people who think that way. And Rashid is out of our jurisdiction, but Hasan isn't. And I don't think Hasan should be imprisoned because of his political views, as crazy and scary as they are. Maybe he should stop to think that for a while he has been flying pretty close to the sun and people might see him as a bit concerning. But instead he blames the fact that other YouTubers, I guess including myself, talk about him.
The very fact that that was like a point of contention that could have gotten me arrested is insane. And I genuinely in that moment was thinking like, these dumbass slop tubers are actually playing with fire.
So it's our fault that your views are the way that they are, and we are not entitled to have an opinion on them? Like, listen, dude, I've said that I defend your right to have your views, and I'm thankful you weren't arrested. It would be a big problem I'd have to call out if the Trump administration were behind that, but you weren't arrested. And interestingly enough, one of the so-called slop tubers, Zach Hoyt aka Asmongold, who Hasan has feuded with, responded to the allegation that people like him were partially responsible for his detainment.
I take absolutely no responsibility in Hasan getting detained, but I wish I did. The fact is that he does support terrorist propaganda, and ask yourself the question, would you want the TSA and the people that are vetting the individuals coming inside of our country to do additional questioning towards people that have a record for supporting known terror groups? Would you want them to do that? And I think the answer to that is absolutely yes. 100% yes. And I think even he would say that. He would have to say that. How would you say no to this? And I think that Hasan and everybody else, including myself, let's all sit together and say a collective thank you to the government for keeping us safe. Making sure that we're not letting people that are actual terrorists, because Hasan is not an actual terrorist. He just likes cosplaying as a person who likes them. We're not letting actual terrorists into the country. Thank you, Donald. Thank you, Donald. I don't know if Hasan's going to say thank you for this or not. I've got a feeling he might forget. But hey, you know, we'll have to find out.
Now, extra respect to Asmongold for specifying that Hasan is not actually a terrorist, because in this time it does get hard to differentiate someone who supports the ideology versus people who actually cause violence, and Hasan is the former. But as Asmongold said, if you walk those fine lines and your rhetoric seems to align with the ideology of these designated terrorist organizations, you might get put on those watch lists, and you should get scrutinized. Because not saying Hasan Piker will eventually become one, but what about the next guy who we have information on? They've seen his social media that seems concerning but decide not to look into because they don't want to come across as racist or Islamophobic, and he ends up being behind a terror attack. Then they would also get the blame. Our culture is putting them in an impossible position, and Hasan is contributing to that. He can't see outside his own bubble, and he shifts blame and accountability to anyone but himself. And guys, I want to thank you all for watching this video as always, and if you appreciated my commentary, please give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to this channel, hopefully I've earned a subscription. Here's some more videos for you to watch in the meantime. Until next time, peace out.